What if the single best planting decision you make all year happens in a month most gardeners have already given up on? Welcome to Roots and Garden Secrets. I am really glad you are here today, because this one is going to shift the way you look at your garden calendar completely. Here is the truth that took me a long time to figure out. The gardeners with the most beautiful yards in spring are not the ones who work the hardest in April. They are the ones who made a quiet, strategic move back in August, while everyone else was winding down. They understood something that most homeowners never hear. Warm soil is not a problem to work around. It is actually the most powerful tool you have for building a stronger, more established garden before winter even arrives. When you plant the right perennials now, their roots spend the coming weeks growing deeper and anchoring harder into the ground. By the time spring shows up, these plants are not starting over. They are already ahead. Today I am sharing 11 perennials that thrive when planted in August, along with the expert care approach and a professional 3-stage growth principle called sleep, creep, and leap that explains exactly why some gardens seem to effortlessly get better every single year. Stay with me through this list. I think you are going to find at least 2 or 3 plants that make you want to head to the nursery this weekend. And if this kind of content is useful to you, please take a second to hit like and subscribe to Roots and Garden Secrets. It genuinely helps this channel keep growing. Before we get into the plants, let me take just a moment to explain why August planting works so well. Because once you understand the science behind it, everything clicks into place. Here is what most people do not realize. Soil in August holds a temperature somewhere between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit across most of the country. That is the sweet spot for root development. Roots become active around 50 degrees and grow at their strongest between 65 and 80. Compare that to spring, when April soil in most moderate climates sits between 45 and 55 degrees. A plant you put in the ground in spring spends its first several weeks simply waiting for the soil to warm up enough to begin growing roots at all. August gives you a head start that spring genuinely cannot match. The golden rule is simple. Get your perennials in the ground at least 6 to 8 weeks before your average first frost date. For most gardeners in zones 3 through 8, August sits right inside that window. If you are in zones 9 or 10 where summer heat stays intense, wait until late August or early September when conditions begin to ease. Now here is something most gardening videos never talk about. Professional landscape designers follow a principle called sleep, creep, and leap. Every perennial garden moves through 3 distinct stages. In year 1, the plants sleep, doing the most important work of their lives underground, building the root foundation that supports everything that follows. In year 2, they creep, growth becomes visible, gaps begin to fill, and the garden starts feeling intentional. Then in year 3, they leap, and the garden transforms into something that looks like it has been there for decades. From that point forward, it actually needs less from you, not more. Planting in August gives your perennials extra weeks of warm soil before winter, which means that sleep stage gets a serious head start. For many gardeners, that translates into reaching the leap stage in closer to 2 to 2.5 years instead of 3. That is a meaningful difference, and it all starts with the decision you make this month. Now let us get into the plants. Alright, let us get into the plants. And I want to be clear about something before we start. Every single plant on this list was chosen not just because it is beautiful, but because it gives you specific advantages when planted in August and rewards you with less work every year that follows. Let me walk you through each one. Plant number 1 is creeping phlox. If you have ever driven past a hillside in early spring and seen what looked like an enormous blanket of pink, purple, and white flowers cascading over the slope, that was almost certainly creeping phlox doing what it does best. It is one of those plants that delivers a level of beauty that feels completely out of proportion to the effort it asks from you. Planted in a spot with full sun and well-drained soil, spacing each plant about 12 to 18 inches apart. August planting allows those roots to weave deep into the warm soil before winter, so come spring, this plant is not spending energy getting established. It is already home and ready to bloom. Once the flowers fade each spring, give it one light trim all over. That simple haircut encourages dense new growth, and, over time, Creeping phlox builds a living carpet so thick it crowds out weeds more effectively than any chemical you could buy. Once established, it rarely needs supplemental watering. One trim a year. That is genuinely all it asks. Plant number 2 is Russian sage. From a distance, Russian sage looks like a soft lavender-blue cloud floating above the garden, with silvery stems that sway gently in even the lightest breeze. It is elegant without trying, and it performs best when you leave it mostly alone. Give it full sun and soil that drains well. If your soil runs heavy with clay, work in some coarse gravel before planting. Space plants 18 to 24 inches apart. Here is the expert tip that most gardeners learn the hard way. Russian sage actually hates rich soil. If you fertilize it heavily with nitrogen, the stems go soft and floppy instead of standing tall and proud. Lean, dry, well-drained soil is where this plant truly thrives. August planting works beautifully because the warm soil encourages rapid root development while the gradually cooling air eases the transition. Once established, it handles drought with remarkable confidence and needs almost no supplemental watering at all. Plant number 3 is coneflower. This is one of the great American native perennials, and it earns that reputation every single season. The large daisy-like blooms come in purple, pink, white, orange, and yellow, depending on the variety, and they attract butterflies and bees throughout summer without fail. Plant in full sun to partial shade with average soil, spacing about 18 to 24 inches apart. Coneflower has a fibrous root system that anchors into warm soil faster than almost anything else on this list, which makes it one of the very best choices for August planting. Here is something I love about this plant. Do not cut back the seed heads when blooming ends. Leave them standing. Goldfinches and other songbirds will visit your garden all winter long to feed on those seeds. No fertilizer needed. Over time, it self-sows gently, gradually filling gaps in your garden with zero cost to you. A plant that can live 10 to 20 years and feeds wildlife through every season. It does not get much better than that. Plant number 4 is Black-Eyed Susan. If there is one perennial that can convince a complete beginner they have a natural gift for gardening, it is this one. Those bold golden yellow flowers with their rich dark centers bring an energy to the landscape that catches the eye from across the yard. Plant in full sun or very light shade, spacing 12 to 18 inches apart in average soil. No need for anything fancy here. Water consistently through the first 3 weeks while the roots settle in, and then step back. The fibrous roots establish quickly, even in dry conditions, making Black-Eyed Susan exceptionally forgiving during the establishment window. Over time, it self-seeds naturally, slowly filling empty spaces and building a fuller garden without you spending another dollar. Leave the seed heads up through fall and winter, and the birds will thank you for it. This plant can live 20 years or more. It is one of the best long-term investments in this entire list. Plant number 5 is hostas. Every garden has that one difficult corner where almost nothing survives. Too much shade, too much competition from tree roots, too little light for most flowering plants. That is exactly where hostas walk in and take over beautifully. Grown primarily for their stunning foliage, hostas come in deep emerald green, blue-green, golden chartreuse, and varieties with bold white margins, with leaf size ranging from compact container plants all the way up to varieties with leaves nearly 3 feet across. Plant in partial to full shade in moist, humus-rich soil. Space them anywhere from 18 inches to 3 feet apart, depending on the variety. Set each plant so the crown sits level with the soil surface, never deeper. One important care note: young hosta leaves are a favorite target for slugs and snails. A simple and effective solution is to scatter crushed eggshells around the base of the plant or set a shallow dish of beer nearby. Slugs are attracted to it and cannot resist. No fertilizer is needed if your soil already contains good organic matter. Hostas simply grow larger and more impressive with every passing year, and once established, they are remarkably self-sufficient. Plant number 6 is daylilies. If reliability had a flower, it would look exactly like a daylily. With thousands of varieties available, in colors spanning brilliant orange, buttery yellow, deep red, soft pink, creamy white, and rich burgundy. There is a daylily for every garden style imaginable. Plant in full sun to partial shade in slightly acidic, moderately fertile soil. Space clumps 18 to 24 inches apart and place the roots shallow, no deeper than 1 inch below the soil surface. August works well because daylily roots initiate growth within days in warm soil. One thing that makes daylilies exceptional over time is how generously they multiply. After 3 to 4 years, a single clump can be divided into 8 to 10 new plants, giving you free material to expand your garden or share with a neighbor. One important caution worth mentioning clearly: daylilies are highly toxic to cats. Both the leaves and the pollen can cause rapid kidney failure. If cats visit your property regularly, plant these with that in mind. Plant number 7 is lavender. There are plants you grow for how they look, and then there are plants you grow for how they make you feel. Lavender belongs firmly in that second category. The soft purple flower spikes and that unmistakable fragrance transform an ordinary backyard into something that feels genuinely peaceful. Plant it near a patio, a walkway, or an outdoor seating area so you can enjoy the scent on warm summer evenings. Lavender demands full sun without compromise and soil that drains exceptionally well. If your soil is heavy clay, mix in coarse grit or build a planting mound about 6 inches high before you plant. Space plants 12 to 18 inches apart. Here is the expert insight that surprises most gardeners. Lavender actually produces more flowers in lean, poor soil than in rich, heavily amended beds. Resist the urge to fertilize it, especially with anything high in nitrogen. Too much nutrition pushes leafy growth at the direct expense of blooms. The dry conditions of late summer make August an ideal planting window, because lavender never has to sit in the kind of excessive spring moisture that so often leads to root rot. Plant number 8 is perennial salvia. If your goal is bold vertical color that keeps coming back without the annual expense of replanting, perennial salvia belongs near the top of your list. Its upright spikes of deep purple, violet, and blue create strong visual contrast against lower-growing plants, and pollinators absolutely love it. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil, spacing 18 to 24 inches apart. Water consistently for the first 3 weeks, then gradually reduce as the plant settles in. Here is a technique that experienced gardeners use to get dramatically more from this plant. After the first major flush of flowers finishes, cut the spent flower stems back by about 1/3. Do not cut all the way to the ground, just remove the old blooms. That one simple step often triggers a second full flush of flowers later in the season. Deer and rabbits tend to leave salvia completely alone, which is a significant advantage for anyone gardening in suburban areas, where wildlife browsing is a constant challenge. Plant number 9 is sedum, also known as autumn joy stonecrop. This plant operates on a different level when it comes to handling heat and drought. Its thick, fleshy leaves store water the way a cactus does, which tells you everything about how tough this plant truly is. What makes it especially interesting is the way it transforms through the seasons. Flower clusters emerge in soft pink in August, deepen to rich rose in September, then shift to warm bronze tones in October and November before holding their structural form through winter. Plant in full sun in lean, well-drained soil with 18 to 24 inches between plants. Do not overwater. Here is a tip most gardeners never hear. If you give sedum a light trim back in late June, you encourage the plant to stay shorter and sturdier instead of growing tall and loose. That small adjustment in early summer pays off with a much tidier, more compact display come fall. Once established, sedum is among the most drought-tolerant perennials you will ever grow. Plant number 10 is catmint. Few plants create that effortless cottage garden feeling the way catmint does. Those soft waves of lavender blue flowers spilling naturally over pathway edges give a garden a relaxed, lived-in quality that most people spend years trying to achieve. It is also the single best pollinator magnet on today's entire list. Plant in full sun to partial shade, with well-drained soil, spacing 18 to 24 inches apart. Water consistently for the first 2 to 3 weeks. After the first major bloom period ends, cut the entire plant back by about 1/3. You are not hurting it. You are triggering a second flush of flowers that often rivals the first in both size and color. One lighthearted note worth mentioning. If neighborhood cats start visiting and rolling around in your cat mint, that is completely normal. The aromatic oils in the foliage are irresistible to them. It is usually more entertaining than troublesome, and the plant bounces back just fine. And that brings us to plant number 11, Karl Förster Feather Reed Grass. I saved this one for last because it rounds out a garden in a way that no flowering plant can quite match. Sometimes what a landscape needs is not more color, but height, movement, and structure that anchors everything else together. Karl Förster delivers exactly that across all 4 seasons. Plant in full sun to light shade. Soil requirements are minimal. Space clumps 2 to 3 feet apart to give each plant room to reach its full, graceful form, and set each one so the crown sits level with the soil surface. Unlike many ornamental grasses that spread aggressively, Karl Förster is a well-behaved clump former that stays exactly where you put it. By late summer, tall feathery plumes rise above the foliage and catch the light beautifully in both morning and evening. Through fall, those plumes turn golden. Through winter, the upright stems remain standing, adding life and movement to a garden that might otherwise feel empty and flat. Annual maintenance could not be simpler. Once each year, in late winter just before new growth begins, cut the entire clump back to within 4 to 6 inches of the ground. That is it. 1 cut per year, and this plant rewards you with 4 full seasons of quiet, dignified beauty. Now that you have your plants in the ground, let me share 4 simple rules that will make an enormous difference in how well these perennials establish before winter arrives. These are not complicated, but getting them right separates the gardens that thrive from the ones that just survive. Rule number 1 is about watering, and this is probably the most important one. Do not water lightly every single day. Instead, water deeply 2 to 3 times per week, with enough water to equal about 1 inch total per week, combining both rainfall and what you add yourself. Deep, thorough watering drives roots downward into cooler, more stable soil layers. Shallow daily watering keeps roots near the surface, where heat and dry spells do the most damage. One more thing on this. If your new plants look a little wilted at midday during the first 2 to 3 weeks, do not panic. That is completely normal. The plant is redirecting all of its energy underground. Consistent moisture and a little patience are all it needs. Rule number 2 is about fertilizer, and here the advice is simple. Do not apply any fertilizer high in nitrogen at this time of year. Nitrogen pushes soft, leafy new growth, and that tender new growth is exactly what gets damaged or killed by early fall frosts. If you feel the need to fertilize at all, choose a slow-release blend that is higher in phosphorus and potassium, which support root development rather than top growth. Honestly, for most of the plants on today's list, the best move is simply to skip fertilizing entirely and wait until spring. Rule number 3 is mulch, and it is more important than most people realize going into winter. Spread a layer of organic mulch, whether that is straw, shredded leaves, or pine bark, about 3 to 4 inches deep around each plant. Keep that mulch pulled back at least 1 inch from the base of the stem or crown to prevent rot. What mulch does during winter is protect your newly established roots from freeze-thaw cycling, that repeated pattern of the ground freezing and then thawing that can literally push shallow roots right out of the soil before they have had time to anchor properly. And rule number 4 is the simplest of all. Trust the process. Remember sleep, creep, and leap. The work happening underground right now is building the foundation for everything beautiful that comes next. The gardens that reward you for decades are built on exactly this kind of quiet, invisible progress, made in months like August. So here is where I want to leave you today. Every single plant you put in the ground this August is not just a plant. It is the beginning of a journey. In year 1, it sleeps. Quietly, invisibly, it is building the root system that will support everything that comes after. In year 2, it creeps. You start to see real growth, real presence, real character emerging in your garden. And in year 3, it leaps. That is the moment when neighbors slow down walking past your yard. That is when your garden stops looking like a collection of individual plants and starts looking like something that belongs, something that has always been there, something alive with color and texture and movement through every season. And here is what I find most remarkable about that journey. The further along it goes, the less it needs from you. The smarter your plant choices today, the more your garden rewards you tomorrow, while quietly asking for less and less in return. That is not luck. That is exactly what you are building right now with these 11 perennials. The smartest garden is never the one that demands the most from you. It is the one that keeps getting more beautiful while you spend more time simply enjoying it. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me which of these 11 perennials you are planning to plant this August, and if your garden is already on its way, let me know whether you are in the sleep stage, the creep stage, or whether you have already hit that incredible leap. I genuinely enjoy reading every single one of your stories. Until next time, this is Roots and Garden Secrets, and I will see you in the next video.